So this is my topic, rational drug therapy in rheumatoid arthritis. So before we go into the drug therapy, I think there should be a rational diagnosis first, because problems are made here and drug treatment is given headlong with lot of problems later on. Undo the problem becomes a big problem then. So history of inflammatory polyarthritis of a few years. I think this is the of a few years with typical RA joint damage deformity is not a diagnostic dilemma. You don't even need to do the serology there. You don't even need to do x-rays to confirm the erosion. So that's not the problem. The problem of diagnosis comes with early and very early arthritis. Since the time I started doing rheumatology in '92 with Professor Joshi, and now people are coming much earlier to us now than before because they know that there is therapy. And because of this, we also face problems because making a firm diagnosis of rheumatoid very early on becomes a little difficult. And there are two terms that have come on. One is an early arthritis, which is less than 6 months, and very early arthritis is less than 3 months. And we are seeing them now. We are seeing them with even a post-viral arthritis coming to us and asking us whether this is rheumatoid or not. So it's getting more difficult to make a proper diagnosis. But by and large, clinical synovitis, if it is there, if it is polyarticular, if there has been a viral infection, you would probably think of viral arthritis. But there is a subset of those who are genetically predisposed to get an inflammatory arthritis. In them, this viral arthritis comes and switches on another inflammatory arthritis like rheumatoid and goes away. That you won't know unless you go over a period of time and observe them and follow them up. You will not know that. So you will need to call all this post-viral arthritis back to you just to make sure that they have subsided. So by and large, we try to make sure whether there is synovitis or not, clinical or otherwise. People are using ultrasound. It's more dependent on the person doing it. It's more time consuming. MRIs are more expensive, but probably a little bit more dependable in picking up synovitis, tenosynovitis, etc. than ultrasound, which is a little bit more time consuming. Serology would prefer either of these two to be positive, but in early inflammatory arthritis, anti-CCP has probably more efficacy than rheumatoid factor, because rheumatoid factor becomes more positive as the arthritis becomes more into years of life. Anti-CCP is very specific, more specific for rheumatoid. So it allows you to differentiate from other forms of arthritis, even at times helps you differentiate it from post-viral arthritis as well. So that's something that we do. And other rheumatic diseases as well. I'll just go one step here to say that this is a nice slide. This is from my Professor Joshi, who used to say that. He said, when you're taking a history, look at the extra baggage that the patient is coming to you with. If the patient is talking only about the joints, sande dukto, joint pains, swelling, stiffness, nothing else, then he falls in this bracket where it's rheumatoid and spondylo. And he says that if that patient is saying, no, I also have, swelling in my leg, I had a rash, I also had something a little bit in the lung, I was coughing for a while, then your antenna should go up and say this might not be just arthritis, and look for other forms of connective tissue diseases, and maybe your rheumatology colleague will be of great help there instead of just going headlong and treating them as rheumatoid. So this is something in a nice, very smart, simple way of remembering. Somebody who comes with a very big baggage of other clinical features other than the joints, please think of other diseases. There are more than 140 other rheumatic diseases that keep us alive. So please think of them and you can send to your rheumatologist close by. So immediate problem is pain control, and I don't have to tell you about pain control, but I'll tell you what we do nowadays. If there are no contraindications, one shot of depomedrol is something that is of great value for the simple reason it gives reasonably fast protective effect over the pain, inflammation, synovitis, and it cannot be repeated unless you give it. Oral steroids, the problem we face is sometimes they go away and they don't come back, and they're consuming it for 6 to 9 months and they come with all the side effects. So the control is with you, 120 milligrams in an adult intramuscular. It can be repeated up to 3 to 4 times a year if needed. But if you are good with your disease modifying agents from day one, you will not need more than one, right? Oral steroids, I think he spoke about it, probably give 15 milligram taper. Moderate dose is 15 milligrams. You usually don't need very high doses. And you're able to taper it out in about 4 weeks time maximum. You can go and give a tapering dose of 15 for 5 days, 12.5, 10, 7.55 and come off. By the time, if you've added disease modifying agents from day one, it started acting. And most patients come off it. And very rare, an intra-articular steroid if there is one joint, or rarely, we don't use this nowadays. In the past we used to, when we didn't have too many other good biological agents and disease modifying agents. We used to give IV Solumedrol for 3 days for rheumatoids, which we rarely do nowadays. Now the choice of the above would depend on clinical features and needs to be individualized. Oral NSAIDs or steroid you'll usually need for 4 to 6 weeks until the DMARDs start working, and steroid 0.25 milligram per kg, 15 milligrams, etc. would be more than enough. If adequate doses of disease-modifying agents, conventional or biologics, are given to patients, patients do not need NSAIDs or steroids for more than a few months. The pains that remain behind after DMARDs have started working can be well managed by Dolo, myospas, ultrasets, etc. You rarely need anti-inflammatories and steroids if your disease-modifying agents are working well. So as regards the disease-modifying agent, these are the few that are there in the market. There are a few more which I don't use much, but these two I've highlighted because they're actually the ones that really work in patients. Salazopyrin also works. We tend to use it in women who are trying to plan pregnancy, etc. For buck, these are the two ones, especially methotrexate is still the drug of choice when we start patients with rheumatoid arthritis. It's for many reasons. It can reduce inflammation reasonably quickly, 4 to 6 weeks. The doses can be titrated depending on the disease of the patient. For some it's 15, for some it's 17.5, for some it's 20. The third thing is it does reduce radiological progression. It's one of those few drugs that has been known to increase life expectancy. So long-term studies, it's been used for 60, 70 years. So that's the kind of data we have on methotrexate. The important thing though is to go up to 25 milligrams per week, which is hardly done. People just give 10, 15 milligrams and they think that it's not working. But that's never to be done. Often we switch them over to a subcutaneous injection, although the vial says intramuscular, you need to give it subcutaneously. And you can go up to 20 milligrams, wait for about 3 to 4 weeks and go up to 25 even. And you'll be surprised that the ones who are not responding on 15 do very well on 25 subcutaneous. And many of our patients learn and take it on their own. So the usual side effects we know about, GI, oral ulcers, etc., which the folic acid that we give can take care of. Although it's said that 1 tablet of folic acid per week is enough. Indians probably, they have some amount of folic acid deficiency, may need to give a little more. Avoid it on the day that you give the methotrexate. Too high doses of folic acid can interfere with the efficacy of methotrexate. Hypersensitivity, pneumonitis and nodulosis are rare and we see it once in a while. Leflunomide is something as good as methotrexate, but probably I will put it second in the list because the only 2 doses are there, 10 milligrams and 20. And as we all know, everyone's rheumatoid is very different, just like diabetes. 1 tablet might mean 15 milligrams might be adequate for some, and some might need 17.5, 20. So increasing and decreasing methotrexate is easier than you can do with leflunomide, and that's why methotrexate still holds its fort. Equipotent, but less flexible dosing. Loose motions, increased transaminases, just like methotrexate, can also involve the lung like methotrexate. Weight loss is something that we see, and peripheral neuropathy if you're using it for a very long period of time. Salazopyrin, like I said, I would probably put it at third. Up to 3 grams in a day we go. That's something that you need to know. The side effects, sulfa side effects, are usually within the first few months of treatment. So if that is not happening, it's unlikely. The long-term side effects are usually pigmentation and azoospermia, which can occur in males. So you have to be a little conversant with that. That apart, the usual GI side effects of acidity, all that can occur with salazopyrin, which you will have to take care of. HCQS I put last because it's a good drug. Yes, it's a very basic drug, but it's not as potent as I would say methotrexate or leflunomide is in controlling the actual bad rheumatoids that come to us. So therefore, it's an add-on drug. Many people add it on to methotrexate to reduce the liver side effects of methotrexate. There are a few studies that say that, but I wouldn't probably give it as the only drug in most patients. Very, very mild cases, yes. So majority of rheumatoid patients can be managed effectively with adequate doses of conventional DMARDs, either as monotherapy or as combination. There is one called step up where you start with one and add on the other quickly in 6 to 8 weeks if there is no control. There is called step down. There is no actual evidence to suggest one is better than the other. I prefer the step up because the side effects of 4 or 5 drugs together for me is a little more than one after the other getting added on. So I prefer that. But I do increase the dose of that monotherapy quite quickly to get hold of it. So small molecules are there, the JAK2 inhibitors, like you've heard the names that have come up, and the biologics that have come. By and large, both the above are added to conventional agents. They are not usually given alone, but added. The 5 Ds, I think this is one of the important slides that I would like to get home through. Before starting a switching, make sure that the disease diagnosis is correct before you escalate therapy. Second thing is make sure the correct drugs were used until now before you think of biologics and other big things. Make sure correct dosage was used, like 25 milligrams of methotrexate, if tolerated, should have been used before you say it's not working. The appropriate time has to be given, and disease is active. This is the most important thing. Many times the drug therapy is escalated only because the patient has had pain and nobody has gone into the details of why the pain is occurring. It might be a damaged joint that is causing pain. It might be secondary fibromyalgia that's causing pain. It can be a osteomalacia because the patient is not going out. So you have to see that before you really say that this is, uncontrolled rheumatoid and I'm going to hike therapy. That's something that we see very, very clearly in the clinics. And this is this huge list of drugs that have come. I don't want to go into the details. You can go through this, but I've just highlighted the ones that are commonly used: etanercept, adalimumab, infliximab, tocilizumab, Ritux. And tofacitinib is a new kid on the block that we are using more and more. It's a tablet form. You have to be careful with its side effects too. So nobody speaks about this. For every 100 articles that tell you how to start a new drug and add a new drug, there is one somewhere who's nobody looked at as to how to reduce drug. That's the first thing that the patient asks you. When a patient of RA is clinically and lab-wise stable for a year, one can try to reduce medications. So from 20, you can make it 17.5 for 6 weeks and then down to 15. A proportion of patients are able to do that. So you have to give it to them that you can reduce and see, because you can reduce the side effects. Reduce biologics first and then conventional DMARDs. Biologics, you can either reduce the dose or increase the interval. Many times we increase the interval. If it is 2 weekly, we make it 3 weekly, 4 weekly, like that. And many patients are able to reduce the DMARDs to a lower maintenance dose and they are happy. And reduction of therapy is difficult in those with raised inflammatory markers, very high serology and resistant polyarthritis, and especially those. So in this group, you have to be a little careful while reducing. And so last slide, rational diagnosis is the first step to rational therapy. That's where I think most mistakes are made and unnecessary drugs are given. Immediate pain relief, I would prefer IM steroid, but NSAIDs are good enough. Any NSAID that you like, especially the long-acting ones at night, can take care of the morning stiffness. A short course, like I said, your short course is usually 4 to 6 weeks. Conventional DMARDs, methotrexate, try to go up to 25 milligrams. Otherwise, don't give the drug up. It's too good a drug to push by the wayside. Salazopyrene, hydroxychloroquine, we add to methotrexate. JAK inhibitors are being used more and more. Usually added to other DMARDs. I'd stick my neck out and say that probably it gives more bang for the buck to spondyloarthropathy than rheumatoid. I'll tell you why. I'm talking on medical management of spondylos after a few speakers. Biologics in a proportion who don't respond to above. We have a myriad of biologics. You would go for the one which is reasonably cheap and which you have used and has the maximum historical data. That's what you would go for, and that's what we are doing. Adalimumab is the one that is being used more and more. Etanercept, tocilizumab, rituximab. Now these usually need admission, intravenous infusion. These are subcutaneous, and that's why more people are using it. Can taper DMARDs to a lower dose after 6 to 9 months of good control. You don't have to stop it, but you can come to a lower level. Thank you for the patient hearing.